news, National Assembly passes 54.99 trillion naira 2025 budget. Custom intercepts cache of smuggled arms and ammunition in Lagos. And CBN to sanction banks imposing ATM withdrawal limit below 20,000 naira. Many thanks for joining us on the news on TV360 Nigeria. I'm Tamilore Akinkwolye. The National Assembly has passed the 54.99 trillion naira 2025 appropriation bill following separate approvals by the Senate and the House of Representatives on Thursday. A breakdown of the budget reveals 3.645 trillion naira allocated for statutory transfers, 14.317 trillion naira for debt servicing, 13.64 trillion naira for recurrent expenditure, and 23.963 trillion naira for capital expenditure under the Development Fund. The fiscal deficit was pegged at 13.08 trillion naira with a deficit to GDP ratio of 1.52%. Now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had earlier increased the budget proposal from 49.7 trillion naira to 54.2 trillion naira, seeking legislative approval.
A bill for an act to authorize the issue from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation, the total sum of 54 trillion 990 billion 165 million 355,366 naira only, of which 3 trillion 645 billion 761 million 358,925 naira only is for statutory transfers. The sum of 23 trillion 963 billion 251 million 624,250 naira only is for contribution to Development Fund for capital expenditure for the year ending on the 31st day of December. This bill is read a third time and passed. And I hope that this appropriation bill will contribute to moving Nigeria forward and will assist Mr. President in his renewed hope agenda to renew the hope of Nigerians in all facets of life, from infrastructure to security and to provision of even respect for this country from the international community, most especially to leave a better nation for the future generations of this country.
The Defense Headquarters has launched Operation Safe Corridor in the Northwest, with its headquarters in Task Force and for the state. The initiative is designed to combat insecurity by providing a structured pathway for repentant terrorists and bandits who voluntarily surrender their arms to be rehabilitated and reintegrated into society. The program, previously successful in rehabilitating Boko Haram defectors in the Northeast, has now been expanded to address security challenges in Zamfara, Kebbi, Katsina, Sokoto, and Kaduna states. The program is built on 5 pillars: disarmament, demobilization, deradicalization, rehabilitation, and reintegration. Operation Safe Corridor is expected to play a key role in restoring peace and stability across the Northwest. Now, joining me to discuss this better is retired Commandant of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, NSCDC, Nnamdi Okonkwo. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Okonkwo. Now, what is your take on the establishment of Operation Safe Corridor to help rehabilitate ex-bandits?
To be honest with you, this establishment of this Operation Safe Haven, I think is a beautiful idea because it will assist in curbing what you call banditry and maybe terrorism. These people will have the opportunity to be rehabilitated and maybe schools as to be able to reunite with the society. So this is my take, even though I know that establishing this has a lot of pros and cons. But this news item here will not allow for the provision of all the materials required in terms of the pros and then in terms of the cons for the benefit of the society and for the betterment of the security of the country.
Now, despite the program's implementation in the Northeast, the region still faces significant terrorism challenges. Now, what measures can be taken to ensure that the Northwest does not also experience similar setbacks?
It is my advice that the government should immediately deploy its counter-terrorism policies and work with it, and so that they will be able to meet up with the needs of the people in terms of the provision of safety and freedom from all anxieties of danger. If the government adopts that, putting the community affairs in place, the environment, the safety, and the security of the people, this will be the most tidy idea that the government can follow so that it does not spread anymore.
Now, finally, before I let you go, many communities have expressed skepticism about reintegrating former insurgents. Now, what steps can be taken to foster trust and to also ensure the safety of these communities?
You see, the thing is, it depends on how the management of that safe haven, if they are able to draw up a management plan, they would be able to, just in case the people who are coming, because one does not know the intent of their minds. You see, most times the intent of the mind is much the same as the state of a digestion. The actus real is only what we can determine, but their minds cannot be so determined. So what they will do is take all the necessary precautions to make sure that these people are well trained in terms of new skills, how to be able to acquire skills and then deploy the skills they've acquired in the proper perspective. This is my take, and this is how I think the government can do it, and they have to do it with all seriousness, with the speed it requires, and the surprise it requires, and the secrecy it requires. So all of these must be put in place in order to be able to put that together so that the government will thrive in what they are trying to do or achieve for a better society in Nigeria.
Right, former Commandant of Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, Citizen Nnamdi Okonkwo, thank you very much for your time. Still on security matters, the Defense Headquarters has reported significant operational successes in the South-South region between January 3rd and February 13th, 2025. Troops fought oil theft worth an estimate of 646 million naira during this period, marking a major win against economic sabotage. Speaking at a bi-weekly media briefing, Director of Defense Media Operation Major General Marcus Kangige revealed the 75 terrorists were also neutralized, 138 suspects were arrested, and 46 kidnapped hostages were successfully rescued. Major General Kangeye attributed this achievement to the coordinated effort of the Armed Forces Land Component, the Office of the National Security Advisor Team, security agencies, and hybrid forces.
Troops discovered and destroyed about 164 crude oil cooking ovens, 37 dugout pits, 19 boats, 16 storage tanks, 38 drums, and 42 illegal refining sites. Other items recovered include 3 pumping machines, 4 tricycles, 7 motorcycles, 5 mobile phones, and 3 vehicles, among others. In a related development, troops recovered 104 and 2,639 assorted weapons and ammunition, respectively. These include 55 AK-47 rifles, 20 locally fabricated guns, 8 den guns, 18 pump action guns, 1,836 rounds of 7.62 millimeter special ammunition, 376 rounds of 7.62 millimeter NATO, 363 rounds of 7.62 by 12.7 millimeter ammunition, 26 cartridges, as well as 14 and 15 assorted arms and ammunition, respectively.
The Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, has raised the alarm over the financial struggles faced by retired police officers under the contributory pension scheme, describing the situation as unacceptable. Speaking at an interactive session on pension matters in Abuja, Egbetokun called for an urgent reassessment of the scheme, which has left many former officers in distress despite their years of dedicated service. He emphasized the need for constructive dialogue among stakeholders to ensure a dignified and financially stable future for police personnel, while acknowledging that the CSP's sustainable model. Egbetokun stressed that the harsh realities faced by many retirees cannot be ignored.
Over the years, we have witnessed genuine complaints by serving and retired officers regarding the contributory pension scheme. The concerns raised have been persistent and deeply worrisome. It is generally observed that the contributory pension scheme leaves majority of police retirees in difficult financial conditions after years of dedicated service to the nation. This situation is unacceptable to us, and as a responsible institution, we must seek pathways to reorder the unpalatable experiences of our retired officers, while giving hope of a secured financial future to our serving personnel. They point out that pension funds are now managed professionally, reducing the risk of management and ensuring continued payment of benefits. Let me note here that while these arguments are valid, they do not erase the hardships faced by many police retirees. This meeting therefore provides a platform for all stakeholders to engage constructively and arrive at a well-informed position on this matter.
Where a defined period payments are made in retirement, the sponsor of the scheme, e.g. the employer. The employer is the one to remove this money meant for the employee. Must make further payment into the fund if necessary to support this defined treatment payment. Or secondly, which is just new introduced within the global space, not only in Nigeria, a defined contribution plan or contributory scheme under which defined amounts are paid in during working life, and the retirement payments are whatever can be afforded from that.
We apologize for the break in transmission. Meanwhile, the Nigeria Customs Service (NCS) has officially ended 1,599 arms and 2,298 rounds of ammunition intercepted between 2018 and 2024 to the National Center for the Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons. The handover ceremony took place at the Federal Operation Unit Zone A, Ikeja, Lagos on Thursday, with the Comptroller General of Customs Bashir Adewale Adeniyi addressing journalists about the significance of the seizures in enhancing national security. Speaking at the event, the CGC Adeniyi detailed how the weapons were intercepted, citing notable examples such as 2018 discovery of 440 pump-action rifles, concealed 516 bags of plasters of Pari POP in a container, emphasized that these interceptions highlight the active collaboration between customs and stakeholders to combat arms smuggling and safeguard public safety. Meanwhile, in Elders Party Nigeria have lauded the Nigerian government's approval of 4.8 billion naira to fund for HIV/AIDS treatment in the country, as well as $1.07 billion in financing for healthcare sector reforms under the Human Capital Opportunities for Prosperity and Equity program. Minister of Health Ali Pate announced that the funding underscores the Nigerian government's commitment to providing life-saving treatment and reducing healthcare costs for vulnerable populations. Following the announcement, experts called for increased funding by both private sector and government at all levels in order to ensure an effective and sustainable national response. TV360's correspondent Simisola Adigun has more in this next story.
The financial sustainability of the HIV and AIDS response in Nigeria faces a variety of challenges, including heavy reliance on donor funding that is declining, a low level of domestic funding, and a low level of private sector financing. Just recently, Donald Trump approved a temporary waiver for life-saving humanitarian assistance under the U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR, a key program for HIV/AIDS treatment in Nigeria and other developing countries, which covers medicine, medical services, food, and shelter, reversing an initial 90-day pause on the foreign aid. This necessitated the approval of 4.5 billion naira by the Nigerian government for the procurement of HIV and AIDS treatment packs to support Nigerians living with the disease.
Even though we have partners that are supporting the treatment, but federal government is already putting its resources to contribute, and we see that that is a signal that the support that the government is providing to those who are vulnerable to reduce the cost and to ensure that life-saving treatment is available.
The Federal Executive Council also established a committee tasked with developing a long-term strategy for funding HIV and AIDS programs domestically. Experts in Nigeria highlight the need for such government-led sustainability efforts to reduce the country's continued reliance on donor support.
I think it's a positive move in the right direction, because now the move is for us to become for sustainability. We are talking about a new business model in HIV management in Nigeria, so that state actors, government has a larger role to play in managing this condition, so that we don't have two tracks, one for HIV and then one for other diseases and all. So we're talking about integrating and getting states to have more responsibility.
What has been done, what has been announced, is more like a stopgap measure, just to ensure that, you know, we don't have chaos on our hands over the next 4 months. But if over the next 4 months we do not hear, you know, any significant commitments, you know, from the government, like probably increase in commitments, then we would have a big problem, you know, on our hands. So we want to see significant increments from the government in terms of supporting the treatment program.
The Nigerian government has also announced plans to commence domestic production of HIV and AIDS commodities, including test kits and antiretroviral drugs, before the end of 2025. According to the Director General of the National Agency for the Control of AIDS, Temitope Ilori, the initiative is part of the government's broader efforts to eliminate AIDS as a public health threat by 2030. This move is described as a bold course in addressing funding challenges and protecting Nigerians living with HIV and AIDS.
If we have, you know, the enabling environment, there is power, you know, all of the things that the industry requires to be able to deliver is available, then definitely I believe our pharmaceutical industries can compete, you know, on the same pedestal with their contemporaries in other countries. And we also have a huge market here.
It's important for us to have a wider scope that funding needs to, for us to eliminate, that's the goal of funding. We don't want HIV, we want by 2030, we want HIV to be, not to be a pressing concern. We don't want it to have the epidemic condition. We want it to have it largely under control. And for that to happen, the 95 target needs to be brought to place, that 95% of people that have the disease know that they have the disease.
Delivering HIV and AIDS services can become more efficient if management practices are taken into account. These experts press for private sector engagement in the national HIV response in Nigeria. They also emphasize the importance of creating and expanding community initiatives for HIV and AIDS education and prevention, and for the care and support of people living with HIV and AIDS in the country. Simisola Adigun, TV360 News.
It's time for a short break, but still to come on news now. WHO says suspension of USAID would disrupt global health programs in 50 countries. We'll give you details of the story shortly after this break. Welcome back. Now a quick recap of our top stories. The Nigerian Senate has approved a 54.99 trillion naira budget for the 2025 fiscal year, marking an upward revision from the initial 49.7 trillion naira proposed by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in 2024. The revised budget, presented on February 5, 2025, reflects additional revenues projection from government agencies. We also told you that the Nigeria Customs Service has handed over 1,599 arms and 2,298 rounds of ammunition intercepted between 2018 and 2024 to the National Center for the Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons during a ceremony at the Federal Operation Unit in Lagos. Comptroller General Bashir Adewale Adeniyi highlighted significant seizures, including 440 pump-action rifles concealed in POPs in 2018, underscoring the collaborative effort between customs and stakeholders to combat arms smuggling and enhance national security. Now, in case you missed any of the news bulletin, for more updates, you can catch us on Limas World TV and AVO TV, or log on to our website on www.tv360nigeria.com. You can also follow us on our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at TV360 Nigeria, or download our mobile app on Google Play Store, Huawei App Gallery, and Apple Store. On Facebook, we're at TV360 Online. It's time for business news, and Okpayemi Owosheni is on standby. Okpayemi, what's the latest?
Well, Tamilore, the Central Bank of Nigeria has warned that it will sanction banks that force customers to withdraw less than 20,000 naira per transaction from automated teller machines, despite having sufficient funds and requesting a higher amount. This was disclosed in a Q&A explainer released by the Apex Bank following its recent review of ATM withdrawal fees. The CBN emphasized that ATM charges for withdrawals made from other banks' ATMs, both on-site and off-site, are based on the expectation that customers can withdraw up to 20,000 naira per transaction. The Apex Bank encouraged affected customers to file complaints against banks that impose unnecessary restrictions. We'll take a break now and be back with updates from the stock markets. Welcome back. Remarkable rallies seen in stocks like Dangote Cement PLC and other major advancers like PZ and Sunu Assurances caused the Nigerian equities market to increase further by 1.25% at the close of trading on Thursday. The Nigerian Exchange Limited all-share index and equities market capitalization increased further on Thursday from preceding day trading lows of 107,822.53 points and 67,274 trillion respectively to 109,172.03 basis points and 68 trillion naira. Dangote Cement PLC led the advancers after his share price moved from a low of 431 naira to 474 naira 10 kobo, adding 43 naira 10 kobo. It was followed by Sunu Assurances, which increased from preceding day's low of 5 naira 70 kobo to 6 naira 27 kobo, adding 57 kobo in the process. Now, at the close of today's trading session on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, a total of 427 million shares were exchanged in 16,342 deals with a market value reaching 9 billion naira. Now, in comparison to the previous trading day, that's Wednesday, February 12th, today shows the data on the Nigerian Stock Exchange reveals a slight decline in activity. Trading volume dropped by 8%, turnover fell by 10%, but there was a positive shift with a 5% increase in the number of deals. Meanwhile, in global markets, the U.S. Dow Jones bounced back from yesterday's losses, while Japan's Nikkei continued its positive momentum. On the other hand, the UK FTSE saw a slight dip, falling by 0.516% on the stock market. Now, in the foreign exchange markets, the Naira showed a slight upward movement on the black market, trading at 1,570 Naira to the US dollar, 1,985 Naira to the GBP, and 1,655 Naira 15 Naira to the euro. A modest shift in the market as the Naira holds steady against major currencies. And that's it on today's business and stock market report. Back to you, Tamilore, for the rest of the news.
Thank you for that update, Okbayami. On the global scene, the World Health Organization, WHO, has reported that the recent suspension of U.S. foreign aid has disrupted critical health programs in 50 countries. WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus warned on Wednesday that the U.S. pause in foreign aid contribution is having a serious impact on global health, particularly on programs fighting polio, HIV, and other health threats. Speaking at the virtual press conference from Geneva, Tedros urged the U.S. government to reconsider its decision and resume aid funding until alternative solutions can be found. According to him, Trump's funding suspension and disengagement of U.S. institutions affecting global health efforts, including the eradication of polio and the response to mpox. And 28 people were hurt when a car driven by an Afghan asylum seeker plowed into a crowd in Munich on Thursday in what the state premier said was probably an attack, putting security back in focus before next week's federal election. The suspected attack also came hours before international leaders, including U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, were due to arrive in the southern German city for the Munich Security Conference. And finally, on sport, Enzo Maresca confirmed on Thursday that Philippe Jorgensen has replaced Robert Sanchez as Chelsea's #1 goalkeeper as he seeks to recover momentum in the Premier League. 27-year-old Spain international Sanchez has made a string of costly errors this season, including the last month 3-1 defeat at Manchester City. Maresca, whose team faces Brighton again on Friday, confirmed at his pre-match press conference that Jorgensen, who is 22, is currently his first choice. And that wraps up our bulletin on news now. Many thanks for watching. See you again next time.